Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm an intuitive coach and mentor,
And I'm Luisa. I'm an awakening coach and energy healer.
and we're your spiritual besties.
We're just everyday women having an extraordinary human experience.
We've both been led down the path of amazing discoveries through the power of spirituality.
So, we're here to share our experiences as we dive deep into all things sacred.
Our hope is that we can contribute to the collective conversation to help you feel less alone and more confident as you walk the path to becoming more connected with the universe.
We'd love for you to join us each week as we share our discoveries and navigate this journey. So the other day I was like, oh my God, like what should we talk about? And one thing that always keeps coming up for me is like discernment, because I hear the word a lot, gets thrown around a lot, discernment, discernment. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to actually just look up what discernment means. And I came up with two definitions, Webster dictionary definition. And then I was like, okay, what does that mean? Like, what are we looking at? It's the ability to recognize the dangers or believing everything you hear, read, or see. That was one definition. And then the other definition, discernment is a process that involves making judgments, recognizing moral implications, and understanding what is from a higher vibration, God, source, etc., whoever your higher power is.
Mhm.
So that was the spiritual one that I wanted to share. And I think a lot gets lost in what is discernment? How do we use discernment? And how do we develop discernment? I think that's huge, because I'll tell you what, a couple years ago, somebody would have been like, just use your discernment. I would have been like, what is that? Like, what is my discernment? What do I do with it? Where do I buy it? Personally, from my own experience, I'd love to hear how yours has been, but it has been experience.
Mhm.
It has been learning to recognize the moral implications of someone, has been and has come through and made clear what my moral standards are based on being put in situations that have made me have to stop and define that.
I think that it does come from experience. And I think it comes from the ability to step back and look at the situation because what you're saying, and this is, I think, a very common experience for so many people, is, a couple of years ago, you were just sort of running through things, kind of running on this autopilot, probably very reactive, like most of us. That's sort of where we evolved to at some point in our lives as adults. Over time, you're just pretty much reactive, kind of just going day by day, like spinning your wheels, getting through things, autopilot, all that kind of stuff. And so you just don't even really have the awareness in the moment to take time to discern something. And
Yeah.
so I think that it's this practice and experience of learning how to take yourself back for a second and evaluate the situation from a different perspective versus just being in it and reacting. In order to have discernment for something, you need to actually be able to evaluate it and take the time and step back. And so I think it is something that has to be developed over time.
I totally agree. And I'm glad you said it the way you said it, because evaluate it. Evaluate it. I think that's such a key component, that it's like develop discernment and use your discernment, but it is that. It is the evaluation process. So what is that process for you?
Mhm.
What does that look like for you? And the other piece is, I think part of it too is having that grace with yourself, that you're going through a process and that you're growing into this and that you're learning to have discernment.
Mhm.
Because I think part of it for me, my moral compass, that I was like, yeah, always, forever. I'm like, yeah, I have morals. But
Mhm.
it's like, what were they? I couldn't write them down. I
Mhm.
couldn't say it. I couldn't act on them
Mhm.
and be able to even regurgitate to someone, hey, this is what my moral system is. I think that the evaluation process of it
Mhm.
is what's going to lead you to being able to set this set of morals, of values, so that when you are in that situation, you can evaluate the situation. And the evaluation process, at least for me, I feel like what it gives me is, what am I judging? because it's
Mhm.
judging the situation, but what am I judging it based on? What
Mhm.
is the criteria if I needed to have a checklist? What is the criteria that I'm using to judge this situation to be able to ultimately make a decision or whatever needs to happen with discernment is the best way to say it.
Mhm. To me, in everything that I do with both myself and with clients, part of really truly uncovering yourself is getting clear on those things. What are your values? What is super important to you? Because many people can say, oh, well, I don't like this or I don't like that kind of a thing. And they sort of have this idea of what they're just totally against or this negative lens. But at the end of the day, what truly is important to you? What are the things that you truly value the most? As far as on a personal level, discernment, you need to have that in place, right? You need to understand, like you said, what's the criteria and the understanding and the intention to actually take a step back and evaluate situations based on that so that you can discern whether or not something is for you or not. But I was also thinking about sort of the spiritual definition. And I think a lot of times in that context, discernment comes up in this idea around, well, how do I know if what I'm getting is truly guidance? Or how do I know if this thing was really a, a download, we might say, right? Or just sort of like my fear creeping in or my anxiety like saying, don't do
Yeah.
this thing. Is that guidance? And you're really being told, hey, this isn't for you? Or is it, no, I'm just scared as crap. And oh, like I'm talking myself out of doing the thing with my mind and my ego and not actually following any sort of guidance here. And so I think that discernment is really important in that space as well. And it's a different skill set and a different process that you have to learn in order to have discernment in that respect.
One thing that you mentioned that I think is so important because it gets so lost in these lives that we live that move fast and go here, do that, and just kind of this reactiveness that we tend to live in.
Mhm.
One of the things that you mentioned is when you say this isn't for me, or that's no, or no, whatever, where's that coming from?
Mhm.
Right? Because if you don't stop
Mhm.
and at the beginning, at least ask yourself, where is that coming from? You're not allowing yourself the opportunity to develop the discernment ultimately
Mhm.
because you need to be able to evaluate and understand yourself. Like you said, what is truly important to me?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times we walk through life and create this version of ourselves based on all of the things we've been told,
Mhm.
of the things we've seen other people that we may consider to be doing right or wrong, or our parents told us they're successful or they're whatever. We base all of those decisions and all of those likes and dislikes, or no, this is not for me, or I'm not going to do that, just on things that we've heard and picked up along the way that are not our own. So I think a big part of developing discernment is being able to understand where these responses and where this reactiveness is coming from.
Mhm.
Where do these ideas come from? Because we're not going to develop discernment if we don't at least start with the steps to be able to establish where they're coming from and whether they're ours or not. Because some of that shit is not mine. Like, it
Yeah.
is not mine.
100%. I mean, you're absolutely right. Even right, even before that, it's like you have to understand conceptually that a lot of the way we move through life, a lot of the way that we just sort of operate on a day-to-day basis is based on shit we've picked up throughout our lives from other people telling us this is right, this is wrong, this is what you should want, this is not what you should want. And as kids, right, that's super helpful because, ultimately there's rules and there's laws and there are things that we do need to learn about how to operate in society, but it all sort of blends together. It's not just like, here's what's right and wrong as far as like the law and actual societal norms and rules, we also pick up all the things that are just opinions from other people, just sort of their beliefs and what they think is right or wrong, or what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. They have nothing to do with any context around it. It's just their opinion, their beliefs that, of course, they picked up from the people before them too. But we don't know. Your brain doesn't know. It's just like, here's what I'm being told is right and wrong. And so this is it. This is how I now operate based on these beliefs and all these rules that are in there. And so before you can then decide where is this coming from, you have to understand that a lot of it is not coming from actually you. And if you took a step back to evaluate, here's this like belief that I've held on to for a really long time, but is that actually right for me? Is that true for me? If I really think about it, do I believe that thing? Or do I really feel that way? And most people don't do that. They don't even do that part. Having this discernment, finding discernment, developing discernment, it's a process. And I mean, it starts way back with just even understanding conceptually that the all the things that you think are just me and just who I am are not, unless you've done this work and you really have gotten down to the core of who you truly are. But you're just like the average person walking through the day. A lot of the things that you think are just me or just who I am or just the way it is, they aren't.
It's so true. I feel like a lot of our growth, whether it's personally or even just spiritually, a lot of our growth is stunned when we don't even have that concept in place, right? Which
Mhm.
is why we're here. We're here to make sure everybody can hear, hey, stop, listen, it's important. You need to listen to yourself. And I know that for us, this is a spirituality focused podcast because that's
Mhm.
how both of our lives changed. But
Mhm.
in essence, right, a lot of the topics that we cover all the time,
Mhm.
they're day-to-day topics. They're real life stuff, real life situations that we're both living with our
Mhm.
business, with for me, with my full-time job, with my family, with everything, just life, just everyday life. And discernment is so important,
Mhm.
whether you're spiritual or not spiritual.
Absolutely. I mean, it just comes down to actually sort of living your life in this more intentional and more aligned way. And that has nothing to do with spirituality, really. At the end of the day, it's just,
Yeah, it's true.
is this the best way for me to live my life and move through life? And I think when you can actually develop that discernment, your life feels better. Whether you believe in any kind of higher power or not, it's just feels better to live life in a way that actually feels right for you after you've stopped and taken the time to figure out what that is.
As my real life happens, right? And I've returned to work. And for anybody listening, I work at a law firm. And if you know what it's like in the legal field, not only is it hectic and crazy because by the time somebody goes out and gets a lawyer,
Mhm,
this is something that's really impacting people's lives,
mhm,
whether it's criminal law, whether it's a car accident, whatever it is. By the time people hire a lawyer, it's impacting their lives, usually in a negative way at that point, right? So prior to my spiritual awakening, and I worked at law firms before, I walked in knowing that after my first law firm that it was going to be toxic. It was going to be just madness and people yelling at you on the phone because their lives have been impacted and
mhm,
they're paying you. And so you're an outlet and
mhm,
you picked up the phone. But it's been interesting coming back because despite, as I shared with you, all of the non-favorable conditions of working at this specific law firm that I'm at right now, just the way that they operate, their chosen way to operate that I don't align with. It is the first time that I take a job doing something I love because I love this, and I come in and it's not nitpicking, which is what I would have called it before my awakening, is me coming in with the awareness of what I want and measuring whether it fits me.
mhm, mhm,
So I am here to earn a paycheck and I love the work, which is a plus.
Mhm.
But what has happened this time has been so different than literally any other job I've ever taken,
Mhm.
because I've come in and because I have developed discernment, because I put myself first and I'm not going to stay at a job where, I'm disrespected, and all of my own values and
Mhm.
my basically I'm not dealing with shit levels are all in place. It is the first time that I come in and I do my work, and despite this being quite a large law firm environment, which just means that there's extreme higher levels of toxicity and bullshit, I sit there and I'm just focusing on the work that I do. And I love it. I love the work that I do. I have no idea what's going on around me. Can I hear the blah blah, all the BS and the yelling and the numbers and the this client just called and yelled at me and wants their check and etc. Can I hear it all around me all day,
Mhm.
every day? But I know why I'm there.
Mhm.
I know what my morals are. I have the discernment to know what situations I need to engage in and what situations I need to not engage with, and
Mhm.
what people I do want to create professional relationships with and what people I don't.
Mhm.
Where before I would have just kind of taken whatever came up. Oh, this person talked to me, so now we're work friends. And, this and that. It is the first time for me because I have developed my discernment and I am so grounded in who I am and what I want and what I'm willing to put up with and what I'm not, that I actually just come and enjoy. I literally come in and enjoy my working day.
Mhm.
It is amazing because if you knew where I worked or if you've worked at a law firm this size, you would be shocked at that. You don't get that much.
Mhm.
I am patting myself in the back in this conversation right now because it's taken a long time professionally for me to get here and personally.
Yes.
The work that I've put in, I was so afraid a couple weeks ago
Mhm.
that all the work that I've put in the last 2.5 years, that I was basically going to be throwing it out the window because I had to come back to corporate America. And
Mhm.
what has happened has actually been this beauty of seeing myself thrive in
Mhm.
a new light, just seeing how strong I actually am
Mhm.
and actually do work that I enjoy without the noise, even though the noise is right here, literally, like right here all day.
Mhm. I think that that is a huge thing to point out as well, is when you've developed that awareness, you've developed that strong sense of self, and you've developed the discernment, you're then able to very easily let go of things that aren't for you because you know what is. So it's
Yeah.
that letting go, and not saying that we don't ever still feel this way, but in general, not feeling like, oh, I should, or feeling like this sort of obligation that I think a lot of us tend to feel just based on what we've been taught throughout our lives, right?
Yeah.
But there's not this sense of obligation or this feeling like, well, she seems like she's probably a nice person. I probably should go
Oh,
talk to her. I should engage in this relationship with this other person or whatever. It's like, no, I understand what's for me and what's not, and this isn't. And just letting go of the reactivity and the emotionality. Is that a word?
yeah. We just made it one, so.
Emotionality of these different situations.
Oh,
It's so incredibly powerful because I think that's a lot of what discernment is understanding and knowing when you can just let go of something that truly isn't for you. It's not meant for you.
yeah. And it's a beautiful thing to experience in for me in this environment, because this was one of the biggest fears that I had
Mhm.
was, am I going to have to go back to corporate America and I'm going to lose all of this because I'm going to have to do the thing where it was like, just be nice and just be kind to this person, and
Mhm.
I have to meet all these metrics and all these things. And it's been a beautiful realization that I don't. I don't, and I won't.
That's a wrap for this episode.
We hope you found some inspiration, a helpful tip, or maybe just a good laugh.
Remember, amazing human, you are not alone on this path to connect with your inner wisdom and the universe.
To stay connected and keep the conversation going, subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast so you never miss an episode.
And if this episode resonated with you, share it with your friends, family, or anyone who might find value in it. Until next time.